Hey guys! In this video, I will be showing you how to hand paint this ram skull, as you can see in the center here. Perfect for Halloween or any desert, southwestern kind of themed nails. I've already seen a few recreations, so I'm pretty stoked. I'll just kind of explain as I go and show you what products I use as well. So I started with the Presto Gel number 39, perfect red. I'm going to do 2 coats of this. I especially love red matte as well, so if you haven't tried that out, you need to. It's gorgeous. So after you apply the base color, it really can be any color, we're going to go ahead and use the Presto Art Gel White and the Presto brushes number 6. You want a brush that's not too thin and not too thick, since we're going to be using this to outline the skull and to fill it in. The great thing about this design is it doesn't have to be perfect. So if you mess up a little bit or if you need to make changes, that's totally fine. Don't stress. And also remember too, we're going to be outlining this in black later, so the edges don't have to be exactly perfect. So if you're a perfectionist like I am, just, breathe and relax. It's, not going to be the end of the world if you mess up a little. And if you're having any difficulty seeing the detailed work, I would recommend going on your computer and actually viewing this at full screen. You'll be able to see just a little bit more. So we're just going to fill all this in with white. Later you'll see we'll do another coat of white to kind of make it more opaque and not so sheer looking in certain areas. But again, we're just doing the outline base color. So don't worry about any detail, any shading like that. We're going to be adding that in later with some grays that we'll mix in. I'll show you how to do that as well. So here we're going to start painting the ram horn. You want to keep in mind that it's going to be 3D, and the tip right here that I'm painting is actually going to be coming towards you. So keep that in mind as you're making these strokes here. To make it a little bit easier later when we add some dimension and kind of add those little divots and stuff. And we're just going to go ahead and fill that in just like before, not worrying about any detail or anything. Just going to go ahead and give another layer and fill in that whole white part. And the next side, I believe I used the gray, which is shown here, the AM13 from Presto. You don't have to start with the white if you don't want to. You can just go ahead and start with the gray right on top. You'll be able to see it just as clearly as the white, and you won't have to go back and do this, what I'm doing here. Which it does kind of add a little bit dimension, so you can play with that as well. It's a good way to kind of blend and mix the different tones and create the different shades of gray. And if you can, like how I did here, don't cure the outlines because it will create just a little bump when you fill it in and you cure the second time. If you do that, it will just probably bug you later on when you do the black outlines. So it's just a little bit easier if you don't do that quite yet. So right there, I just put 2 little reference points basically where the skull starts and where it ends, just so that I can make them look uniform since it's going to be on a separate nail. And make sure to be patient with yourself here because it is really difficult to mimic something on the opposite side on another nail. So you'll see me, I'm going to pretty much erase this probably like 3 times just to get it right. But that is the beauty of working with gel, right? So if you make a mistake or wreak havoc on a certain part, all you have to do is just dip your brush in a little bit of alcohol and wipe it right off. You don't have to worry about ruining your whole design, especially once we start getting a little bit more deeper into the layers and working with the black and whatnot. I didn't want to edit this part out because I did want to see you guys see me mess up, because it will happen. So if you get frustrated or you don't make the perfect line the first time around, just know that that's totally normal. And again, that's what the alcohol is for. So don't stress out. Keep in mind, this is just a base layer. We will be adding the black on as well to kind of cover up any little imperfections. But to just be easy with yourself because it will be a little annoying and kind of frustrating probably the first time around. So here I'm just going back over again with the white. Both sides have already been cured for 30 seconds. I have it out already, and I know that for the horn I'm going to be using the gray straight away instead of using the white to outline like I did the last time. So since it's out, I'm just going to go ahead and perfect those areas so that the foundation is nice and ready for all the layering that we're going to do next. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of a thicker and shorter brush using the Art 4 from Presto and their black, which is AM2. We're going to mix the colors here. Mind, you can do this with any of the colors. So if you don't have a color exactly perfect, always remember you can mix and blend, just like you would paints. And you can see here, I even put a little bit too much black, so I'm mixing in a little bit more white to get that nice light gray. And here I'm using that lighter gray that we just created to go ahead and add a little bit of dimension into the skull. And you'll see here in a second, I'm going to actually use my finger a little bit to blend it out, to just kind of add a little bit of a smoother transition and make it not so different, because anything that you put on white is going to show up significantly. So you want to use a lighter shade, definitely. It is a skull though, so if you wanted to look a bit more rugged and maybe more antiqued, I guess, you can keep the contrast there and not blend it out so much. That would be totally fine. And also remember too, having the white base layer color will always help for really brightening any pigments that you want to use as well. So if you have a dark surface and you want a bright color, that white will really make it stand out. So now we're going to go ahead and add that dimension by using the darker gray that we mixed earlier, just by making these little squiggly lines, because we don't want them to be perfect because it is a horn. You're just going to make kind of a half an S going down the antler just to show that it is coming towards us at the tip there. And just to make that little shadow line at the bottom. Now with these lines, you want to make sure that they're more of a U shape, and that these lines right here are coming in towards the horn, because it is round, so you don't want it to look straight because it would look a little bit funky. And remember, this is just the shadowing. We're going to be doing the line work next with this really awesome Presto R11 brush. Super teeny tiny, really great for detail, any line work really. So here we're just going to start outlining everything, and in a second you'll see me start to make the furrowed eyebrow pretty much of the skull. You want it to look like a sideways S, so it'll come down and then swoop up to really make it look a little bit more sinister, not so friendly. If you don't want it to look so sinister, and if you want it to be more of a friendlier look, just don't add so much of that arch and it won't look so mean and angry. And you want to keep in mind not to put too much product onto the brush. You can kind of see from the side when I'm dipping in, I'm not putting a whole bunch of product on. If you do, it'll create too thick of lines, and these lines are just so thin and delicate. You don't want to make them too thick and overbearing. And the brush helps a lot with that too. If the brush was any thicker, it probably wouldn't look as clean and neat. And right here, I'm just going to start making the nose of the skull and the little cracks in it. If it helps, pull up an image of a ram skull on Google or something, which is where I actually got this reference photo from. And it'll kind of help you see where all those little lines and divots come from, and where it'll kind of come together later on too. Now you can't really tell, but this next part I'm adding just the tip of the skull here. There's a little crack that goes down the center. And I'm just making a little squiggly line. It's super tiny, but that little tiny line will make a big difference. So now we are going to start attacking the horn. I'm picking up the R6 brush. It's a little bit thicker since the lines are going to be a little bit thicker, and I need that shorter length brush to really make those little swirls at the top. It's basically little squiggly lines again. Doesn't have to be perfect, it's a skull, so again, don't stress. I personally like to have the black thick outline a little bit darker than the inside line work and detail, kind of like a tattoo would be. It looks a little bit cleaner to me. And again, you don't want it to be a perfect straight, backwards S. You want to add those little imperfections since it is the horn. So now we're going to start outlining basically where all those little gray squiggly lines had. So just again, pulling in and out from the inside, keeping that circular motion to show the depth and the roundness of the horn there. And pretty much just follow those same lines that we did. So before it was shading, and now we're just pretty much pulling that in and making those crisp, sharp lines where the divots of that horn is. And again, if you don't know what that really looks like, just pull up an image on Google and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Now some of these lines are going to be closed all the way off, meaning that it goes from one of the black edges to the other, and some of them will kind of just be floating there. So it doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of throw it wherever it looks aesthetically pleasing to you. Again, with this inner part that's coming towards us, you want it to look more like a U to show that it's coming forward. And at the very edge here, we're just going to add like a little lip, that little edge to show that it's twisting and turning. And right here towards the center, I'm going to add a little bit more darkness as well, just to kind of enhance that shadow and that shape. It doesn't have to be too specific here, just kind of add any darkness where you see fit. So now I'm going to go ahead and start pretty much making that outline a little bit thicker. Like I said before, I just like it to stand out and really separate the skull from the red. So fix anything that you see needs to be a little bit thicker. So now again, using just very, very little product, I'm going to be making little teeny tiny lines that cross each other to create a shadow. And I really do suggest to cure right before this step to ensure if you do mess up, you have the ability to just wipe it away with some alcohol. It'll save you some grief, especially with the all the hard work we did on the horn there. This is a really great technique to use really to add any dimension to any design. It's a quick and easy way to shade just by throwing in a couple lines here and there. Makes a world of a difference. So now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Being patient again with yourself. It's always harder doing it in reverse, or maybe that's just me, but always seems a little bit trickier the second time around doing it backwards. Keeping in mind, you want to keep thick on the outside, really little product on the inside. Here I'm even doing all of the shading at the same time. Now this next part, I'm going to add a little squiggly line again from the middle of the forehead, and then almost like a triangle coming away from it. Now if you look at a skull, it actually has that separation, so that's basically what we're drawing on there. Now if you feel bold and you want to press on and keep going at this point, you definitely can. I would at least cure for 5 to 10 seconds under the light just to make sure you secure and lock in those lines that you've made, because there really is nothing worse than making everything perfect and then having to wipe the whole image away. If you can too, with a cleanup brush, you can fix little areas, but what tends to happen is that little area in the alcohol will create a runoff and almost like smear it instead of just wiping it, so usually I end up just wiping the whole thing anyways. Now remember, with these small little lines, you want to keep the brush really light and float it. You don't want to press in too much. The more you press, the thicker the line will be. So if you do want it to be a little bit thicker in some areas, press a little bit harder, but typically for all these thin lines, you want to keep a pretty soft and delicate hand. And you want to keep in mind as well for this part that not all the lines are going to completely connect all the way through. Some are going to start, from the middle or kind of be floating there, and just whatever is aesthetically pleasing and helps enhance that circular round shape of the horn. Don't overthink it too much. It is an imperfect structure, right? So it's a horn, so don't be too hard on yourself to make every little line exactly perfect, because it won't be. So there you have it. We're all done with the hard part. Now you get to see the glorious transformation that top coat can provide. Here you can still see all the bumps and ridges, and in a second, once we put the top coat, that will all magically erase. So I'm using 1 coat of the Presto Matte Top Gel. It is awesome. I haven't seen anything that's better. Haven't used the Ugly Duckling one though, so I've heard great things about that as well. I always love to use matte top coat for any designs that I do, especially if it's on a larger surface like this, because it won't have that annoying glare that a shiny top coat would have. And it does a really fantastic job of making all the colors really pop and make everything look really clean. Especially with that red, I just can never get over a good matte red. So there you have it. If you guys have any questions or comments on art you want to see in the future, I'm going to go ahead and try and do 1 video every week for you guys, so just let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.